What's up, you guys, and welcome back. My name's Natasha, and this is Behavior Breakdowns. Today, we are counting down the top 10 worst body language and behavior clips we looked at in 2025. If you have any guesses as to what you think the worst body language we saw in 2025 was, write it in the comments below. We're about to start the countdown. Let's get into today's video. Coming in at number 10, we have Prime Minister Mark Carney with his hands behind his back. Now, if you're new to the channel, you might not know why this gesture makes the top 10 list. And let me just give you a brief explanation. When we see somebody with their hands behind their back, it creates a subtle sense of mistrust. When our ancient ancestors were out hunting in the wilderness, in order to communicate with one another effectively, they would show the hands to indicate that they held no weapons. Seeing the hands, the palms of the hands, was a good indicator that nothing was being concealed. We still see this gesture used today. I have no weapons. When the hands are behind the back, out of place where we can't see them, it creates a sense of mistrust because it gives us that internal feeling that that person might be hiding something. There might be something dangerous being concealed. One of the worst times Carney did this gesture was when he was standing next to President Trump at the G7 summit earlier this year. I think for Carney, standing in this way brings his shoulders together. It actually shrinks him. It makes him smaller. Trump is a very big and bold man. And when you're standing next to somebody like that, you want to assert presence. You want to make sure that your voice is heard. Sometimes subtle gestures like that are all it takes to amplify a difference in confidence between two people. If somebody has a big, bold presence and somebody else is standing next to them, shrinking themselves, making themselves smaller, creates a sense of power for one person and a sense of vulnerability for the other. Was not a good look for him. Therefore, it is number 10 on my list, Mark Carney and his hands behind his back. Coming in at number 9 on my list of the worst body language and behavior is Miss Sherry Papini claiming to be taking her voice back in an interview with Inside Edition. Now, if you're unfamiliar with who Sherry Papini is, she's a Californian mother who several years ago claimed that she was kidnapped by 2 women and held hostage. It didn't take law enforcement long to put together some inconsistencies in Sherry's story, and eventually it was found out that Sherry had actually faked the entire kidnapping. The whole thing was a hoax, and she was actually just living with her ex-boyfriend. Now, the reason Sherry makes number 9 on the list is that I have to get a kick out of anybody who constructs their own narrative, not once, but twice, and then claims to be able to take their voice back.
Lie after lie. Why believe you now?
I'm not actually asking anyone to believe me now. I'm simply taking my voice back to tell my story from my perspective.
Miss Papini is somebody who refuses to take accountability for her actions and continues to try to paint herself as the victim. So number 9 on the list, Sherry Papini taking her voice back. Coming in at number 8 on the list is David Cochrane doing the desk tap. Nothing says arrogance quite like a little desk tap to help further emphasize a point. In an interview with Conservative MP Melissa Lantsman, David went to bat defending the Liberals, and he had to further emphasize his point by doing a little desk tap there.
Well above the $42 billion that your leader put on the table, and the industrial carbon.
Cochrane also gets a little honorable mention here for following up with an email after I had posted his breakdown. There are so many people out there, including Cochrane apparently, who believe that body language is nothing but snake oil or pseudoscience. The truth is that we can use our body language as an effective tool to help communicate messages to one another. another, sometimes helping to emphasize our points, sometimes helping to send a loud and clear message without even having to speak any words. If you're a driver, for instance, I can think of one little gesture that you've probably seen on the road before. Now, it involves one little finger, and it's an easy way for drivers to communicate to one another, often when there is barriers between them, when words are not effective. They use their body language to communicate a simple and straightforward message. For those people who say that body language is nothing but pseudoscience or snake oil, there's a very simple little gesture that can prove them wrong pretty quickly. So David Cochrane, number 8, the desk tap. Coming in at number 7, we have former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau with all of those lovely shoulder shrugs. Shoulder shrugs themselves are not a terrible gesture on their own. They're actually an effective way to communicate to somebody that you might feel uncertain about something or that you're not fully confident in your response. When we see shoulder shrugs coming around ideas that someone should feel confident in, that's when we raise a red flag. In his resignation speech at the start of 2025, Justin Trudeau talked about his family support and encouragement.
Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement.
He said that he wouldn't be where he was without the support of his family and with their encouragement. And then we saw those shoulder shrugs. Now, that might have been the first indicator that there was some trouble in Trudeau's marriage, showing a lack of confidence around the idea that your family supported and encouraged you is a major red flag. If you can't feel certain about that idea, then it's probably something that's best left unsaid. Now, in that same speech, we also saw some shoulder shrugging coming around the idea of Justin Trudeau being a fighter. Ironically, he tried to emphasize the fact that he was a fighter while simultaneously telling us that he was no longer going to be fighting for Canada. So, number 7, Justin Trudeau with the shoulder shrugs. At number 6 on my list of the worst body language and behavior of 2025 is CBC correspondent Andrew Chang with his feigned confusion. Now, CBC has definitely come under fire this past year for their bias towards the left. Nothing is quite so irksome to me as an anchor who pretends like there is something to be confused about. Now, in one of the videos that I broke down from Andrew Chang's segment about that, he was discussing Mark Carney's playbook for dealing with President Trump. Essentially, CBC was trying to sell you on an idea that Mark Carney has a very strategic plan when it comes to dealing with Trump. He first uses deference and then he uses a defense, and there's a step-by-step playbook that Carney is allegedly using. Now, if that all wasn't enough BS on its own, we also have Andrew Chang giving us these exaggerated and over-the-top facial expressions which create a psychological response in you to also feel that sense of confusion. Andrew Chang is going to give you the answer to a question you weren't even asking. Most news organizations have a specific agenda and they have their own structural tendencies which they follow to tailor certain perspectives. This particular segment really bothered me because it was so dumbed down that it made me feel like the CBC didn't actually feel like its viewers were intelligent enough to put together their own thoughts and opinions. The only thing missing from this segment is big bubbly letters and more colorful graphics on the screen. Personally, I found it to be a bit condescending, and that is why Andrew Chang is claiming the number 6 position with that look of feigned confusion. Coming in at number 5, we have a repeat offender. Miss Sherry Papini is on the list again, this time for breaking down in tears during her interview with Inside Edition. The reason this makes the number 5 position is that there was in fact 0 tears to be had. That's right, not a single tear was shed throughout this entire interview with Inside Edition. Now, considering everything that Sherry Papini claimed she had been through, I would expect to see a bit more of an emotional response from her, especially because in this interview she's discussing no longer being able to visit with one of her children. Sherry's body language throughout this entire video was super interesting to analyze. In fact, it was one of the first videos that I did that actually did well on this channel. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go back and check it out.
Sherry Papini breaks down in tears as she reveals to Inside Edition her broken relationship with her 2 children.
It's the worst kind of torture.
We certainly don't see any breakdown in tears throughout this entire interview. So claiming that number 5 position, Sherry Papini breaking down in tears with Inside Edition. Coming in at number 4 on our list, we have RCMP Commissioner Michael Duhaime. Michael Duhaime and Staff Sergeant Frederick Pensience testified in a House of Commons Ethics Committee regarding the RCMP's involvement or lack thereof in the SNC Lavalin scandal. Michael Duhaime specifically makes the list here for his shifts in past and present tense and also his shifts in pronouns. When Larry Brock questions Michael Duhaime here, he asks for a simple yes or no answer. Now, let's listen to Mr. Duhaime's response.
Did the RCMP obtain all relevant documents to further the investigation, including access to cabinet confidential information, simply seeking a yes or no response?
We were limited with the information that we had access to.
Was that a yes or a no, sir?
I don't know. We didn't know. We don't know. We still don't know this day all the information that's out there because some was protected.
I'll take that as a no.
I would say that Michael Duhaime looks like a deer in the headlights here, but I think Greg Hartley on the behavioral panel would say that this is more of a squirrel in the road phenomenon. You know, when you see a squirrel running back and forth, it's not sure which way to go. That's what's happening with Michael Duhaime's brain here. His brain is becoming overloaded. There's some mental stress happening.
I don't know. We didn't know. We don't know. We still don't know this day all the information that's out there.
Those shifts in past and present tense might be an indicator that there is something off about the timeline and the person's ability to accurately recall that information. Also hear those shifts in pronouns from I to we. That's Duhaime's brain trying to figure out who should bear the responsibility, who's going to be accountable for this. If he says I, is he going to hold the accountability? If he says we, then he's dispersing some responsibility onto other people. It was a simple and straightforward question, and we saw a full-blown squirrel in the road panic. So coming in at number 4, RCMP Commissioner Michael Duhaime with the past and present shift and also the shift in pronouns. All right, guys, we are down to our top 3 offenders of the worst body language and behavior we saw in 2025. Coming in at number 3, we have Meghan Markle and her baby mama dance. In case you missed it, Meghan Markle went on a podcast called Aspire with Emma Grede. Meghan Markle came under scrutiny when she released this clip on her Instagram of her baby mama dance. She posted this video long after her pregnancy, and a lot of people pointed out that her baby bump looked suspiciously like a pillow or some rolled up blankets. If that video weren't enough on its own, during this podcast, Meghan Markle talks about the idea of being authentic. In fact, she talks about it over and over and over again.
Well, I think I go back to the authenticity.
The word authentic was mentioned over 10 times in that interview. That is some repetition on a particular theme, on a narrative that is being pushed towards you. When Emma brought up the importance of being authentic, Meghan reverted back to this baby mama dance.
You have to be authentic. Just be authentic. Did you see my baby mama dance? I mean, stop it.
Of all the things Meghan could have brought up on being authentic, she chose to focus on this video, which was already surrounded by a ton of controversy and suspicion. She could have brought up her authentic feelings about her love for her children, or her love for her husband, or even her love for creating and business, but she chose to further emphasize the authenticity of this video. Now, that to me is suspicious behavior, and when somebody has to constantly remind you of how authentic they are, that should be a red flag for you, because truly authentic people don't need to continue to sell you on the idea of how authentic they are. Coming in at number 3 on our countdown is Meghan Markle and that baby mama dance, and on the idea of being authentic. Coming in at number 2, we have another repeat offender. Can you guys guess who it's going to be? Well, none other than Prime Minister Mark Carney with that facial expression contempt. I saw contempt on Mark Carney's face this year more times than I can count. In fact, we analyzed Mark Carney in several videos on the channel, and in almost every single video I analyzed of him, I saw that gesture, that facial expression of contempt. Contempt looks like one side of the mouth raising. It's a smirking gesture. It's very smug, and it is always associated with disdain or disgust for an idea. Problem with contempt is that it is one of the only emotions that does not go away on its own. In fact, contempt festers. So when you see contempt, it's a good idea to try to figure out why that facial expression showed up and how it can be resolved, because we don't want contempt to turn into resentment, particularly in our own relationships. Being able to spot contempt can help you become a more effective communicator and also help aid you in your personal relationships. So keep your eyes open for that one in 2026. Carney had a lot of contempt this year. We saw it in a number of different clips and interviews and press conferences. Hopefully in 2026, we see it a little bit less for him. So coming in at number 2, Carney's contempt. Coming in at our number 1 position of the worst body language and behavior we analyzed in 2025, drumroll please, the number 1 position has to go to Jake and Rebecca Haro. These are 2 of the worst actors I have ever seen. Rebecca and Jake reported their baby boy, Emmanuel Haro, missing, and after making that report, they decided to speak with law enforcement and the press. Now, not only were there inconsistencies in their story, not only was their body language revealing, but most notably, Rebecca and Jake Haro stood in front of the cameras, stood in front of their community with a sign that said "missing kid." Imagine your child or loved one has gone missing and you're putting up flyers around town. You would want those flyers to contain all of the important information, any relevant details that you could think of, which might be able to help identify them, which might aid in the recovery of bringing them home safely. But Jake and Rebecca Haro felt confident enough to stand in front of the press, to stand in front of the cameras and their community, and hold a sign that said "missing kid." There were no details on the sign of what Emmanuel was last wearing. There were no details or descriptions about what Emmanuel looked like or where he was last seen. All of these things were major red flags in this case, not to mention the terrible acting, the lack of tears, the lack of genuine emotion, the inconsistencies in their story, and the shifts in past and present tense. All of these things put Jake and Rebecca Haro in our number one position of the worst body language and behavior we saw in 2025. Shortly after giving their statements to the press, Jake and Rebecca were both arrested. Since then, Jake was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of Emmanuel Haro. Rebecca remains in custody on a $1 million bail. These two were not only bad parents, but they were bad actors. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for the worst body language and behavior countdown of 2025. Behavior Breakdowns is actually only 6 months old and it's already grown so much. Thank you guys all for watching this year. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for becoming a member. Thank you for commenting and being a part of this community. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to see what 2026 brings for the channel and what other breakdowns we will see in the new year. I hope 2025 was good to you, and I hope 2026 is even better. I will see you guys in the new year. Bye. 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 Say bye.